Billionaire fakes paralysis to test his fiancée, but it's the maid who reveals what true love really is. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching us from. We continue. I promise that this will be the best story you will hear in your life. Alexander Blackwood had everything a man could desire: a sprawling estate in the Hamptons, a fortune that spanned generations, and a reputation for kindness that was rare among the elite circles of New York society. At 32, he stood tall with confident shoulders, his dark hair always neatly combed, and eyes that seemed to hold genuine interest in whoever stood before him. Unlike many heirs to vast fortunes, Alexander remembered the names of his staff, asked about their families, and treated everyone with the same respect regardless of their station. His father, Jonathan Blackwood, watched his son with a mixture of pride and concern. While Alexander had inherited his mother's compassionate nature, Jonathan feared his son had also inherited her trusting heart, a dangerous liability in their world of calculated connections and strategic alliances. The problem with being kind, Jonathan often told his son, is that people mistake it for weakness, or worse, for an invitation to take advantage. Alexander would smile at these warnings. And the problem with being cynical, father, is that you might miss genuine goodness when it appears. This philosophical difference had never caused serious discord between them until Sophia Morgan entered their lives. She arrived like a vision at the annual Blackwood Foundation Gala, tall, poised, with honey blonde hair cascading down her back and emerald eyes that seemed to sparkle with intelligence. But it wasn't her beauty that captured Alexander's attention. It was the way she spoke passionately about marine conservation, the cause the gala was supporting that year. Her knowledge seemed extensive, her commitment unwavering. Within 6 months, Alexander was completely captivated. Sophia appeared perfect, educated at the finest schools, well-versed in art and literature, compassionate towards social causes, and utterly enchanting in the way she made Alexander feel seen and understood. When he announced their engagement after a whirlwind romance, the Blackwood mansion filled with congratulations and champagne toasts, all except from one corner of the grand living room, where Jonathan Blackwood nursed a single glass of scotch, his eyes never leaving the brilliant diamond on Sophia's finger. "You don't approve," Alexander said later that night, finding his father alone in his study. Jonathan set down his book. "It's not about approval, son. It's about time. You've known her for half a year. When you met Mom, you proposed after 3 months, and different times, different circumstances." Jonathan paused. "Your mother came from nothing, and wanted nothing from me except my heart. Miss Morgan comes from considerable wealth herself, and yet I notice she's quite interested in the details of your inheritance." Alexander felt his jaw tighten. "That's unfair. Sophia has never once asked about money." "Not directly, perhaps," Jonathan sighed. "I only ask that you be certain. Love that's real persists through hardship. It doesn't flee at the first sign of trouble." The conversation might have ended there. Another disagreement between father and son, if not for Dr. Raymond Wells, the Blackwood family physician for 30 years, who happened to be present for a routine checkup the following day. After overhearing parts of their discussion, the doctor approached Jonathan with a peculiar suggestion. "I couldn't help but overhear your concerns," Dr. Wells said cautiously. "There is a way to test one's commitment, though I rarely recommend it." Jonathan's interest was piqued. "Go on." "A temporary deception, a situation that would reveal true character when faced with unexpected hardship. The plan took shape quickly: a staged accident, a false diagnosis, a temporary paralysis that would require extensive care and adjustment. Alexander would pretend to be unable to walk, confined to a wheelchair, dependent on others for basic needs. Dr. Wells would provide the medical documentation and props needed to make the deception convincing." Alexander initially refused. "This is madness. I won't lie to the woman I love." "Not a lie," Jonathan countered. "A test. If she passes, if she stands by you when she believes your life has changed dramatically, I'll never question her intentions again. I'll welcome her as a daughter." It took 2 weeks of debate before Alexander reluctantly agreed, swayed partly by his father's persistence and partly by a seed of doubt that had taken root in his mind. What if his father was right? Wouldn't it be better to know now rather than later? The accident was staged meticulously. A car crash on a rainy night, emergency responders who were part of the deception, a private hospital room where Sophia was told that Alexander had suffered spinal trauma. When she arrived, her face was streaked with tears, her hands trembling as she clutched Alexander's. "The doctors say you might never walk again," she whispered, her voice breaking. Alexander, feeling the weight of his deception, squeezed her hand. "We'll get through this together." Sophia nodded firmly. "Of course we will. Nothing changes how I feel about you." For the first week after Alexander returned home, Sophia was the picture of devotion. She rearranged furniture to accommodate his wheelchair, researched specialists, and spent hours by his side. But as days turned into weeks, subtle changes emerged. Her visits grew shorter, her excuses more frequent. There were foundation meetings she couldn't miss, dress fittings that couldn't be rescheduled, friends who needed her support through their own crises. "You need professional help," she finally said one afternoon, her voice gentle but firm. "I can't be your nurse, Alexander. It's not fair to either of us." Alexander nodded, trying to hide his disappointment. "What do you suggest?" "A live-in caretaker. Someone qualified. I've already found the perfect person." The perfect person arrived the next morning. Her name was Emma Wilson, a quiet young woman with chestnut hair pulled back in a practical bun and eyes that seemed older than her 26 years. What Alexander didn't know, what Sophia had carefully omitted, was that Emma was more than just a professional caretaker. She was the daughter of the Blackwoods' former housekeeper, raised on the periphery of wealth, but never belonging to that world. Emma had grown up in the servants' quarters of various mansions, including briefly at the Blackwood estate when she was a child, though Alexander had no memory of her. "Mr. Blackwood," Emma said, her voice soft but steady as she extended her hand. "I'm here to help in any way I can." Alexander looked at her simple clothes, her unadorned face, the competent way she arranged his medications and supplies. There was nothing remarkable about Emma Wilson, he thought. Nothing at all like the dazzling presence of Sophia. Yet as she helped him adjust his position in the wheelchair with strong, gentle hands, he noticed something unexpected in her eyes, not pity, which he had grown to despise, but a simple, straightforward kindness that asked for nothing in return. "Thank you," he said, surprised by the emotion in his voice. Emma smiled, a small, genuine expression that transformed her ordinary features into something almost beautiful. "It's what I'm here for, Mr. Blackwood. Now, would you prefer to have lunch in the garden or the sunroom today?" Alexander didn't realize it yet, but in that moment, something fundamental had shifted in his carefully orchestrated deception. A new player had entered the game, one who hadn't been accounted for in his father's elaborate plan. Days turned into weeks, and Emma Wilson became a constant presence in Alexander's life. She arrived each morning at precisely 7 o'clock, her routine as dependable as the sunrise. She would help him with his morning exercises, prepare his breakfast, and then wheel him to whatever room he preferred for the day. Unlike the other staff who treated him with a nervous deference since his accident, Emma was refreshingly direct. "You're not stretching properly," she would say, adjusting his arms with firm but gentle hands. "If you don't maintain flexibility, you'll have more complications later." At first, Alexander found her frankness jarring. He was accustomed to deference to people eager to please. Emma seemed immune to his wealth and status, treating him simply as a person who needed assistance. She didn't hover anxiously or flood him with unnecessary sympathy. Instead, she created a space of quiet dignity around him, respecting his independence while supporting his needs. Meanwhile, Sophia's visits grew increasingly sporadic. When she did come, she would breeze in wearing designer outfits, bringing gossip from social events and updates about wedding plans that now seemed perpetually postponed. "Darling, I think we should consider a longer engagement," she said one afternoon, carefully arranging herself on the edge of his bed. "Just until we figure out, well, everything. The doctors might find new treatments, and it seems silly to rush when there's so much uncertainty." Alexander watched her fidget with her engagement ring. "What happened to nothing changes how I feel about you." Her smile faltered. "Nothing has changed. I just think we need to be practical." After she left, Alexander found Emma in the kitchen preparing his lunch. "She's postponing the wedding," he said, unable to keep the bitterness from his voice. Emma continued slicing vegetables, her movements precise. People often reveal who they truly are during difficulties. And what does that say about Sophia? Emma placed the knife down and looked at him directly. It's not my place to say anything about your fiancé, Mr. Blackwood. Please call me Alexander. He wheeled closer. And I'm asking for your honest opinion. She hesitated, then spoke carefully. I believe that love isn't just about being there during celebrations and successes. It's about staying when things get hard. When the person you love needs more from you than just your presence at parties. The simplicity of her words struck Alexander deeply. That evening, he watched Emma as she organized his medications and prepared to leave for the day. There was something compelling about her methodical movements, her lack of pretense. She wore no makeup. Her clothes were functional rather than fashionable, and yet there was an authenticity about her that made Sophia's polished perfection seem suddenly hollow. Do you have family waiting for you, Emma? He asked impulsively. She shook her head. No, just a small apartment and a cat named Fitzgerald. Fitzgerald. Like the author? A smile touched her lips. Yes, he's particular and a bit dramatic. It seemed fitting. This small glimpse into her personal life intrigued Alexander. He realized how little he knew about the woman who had become essential to his daily existence. What do you do when you're not here taking care of me? Emma seemed surprised by his interest. I read. I take online courses in literature and psychology. I volunteer at a community center teaching literacy to adults. She paused. Simple things. Those don't sound simple at all. They sound meaningful. A faint blush colored her cheeks. Good night, Alexander. As Emma became more comfortable in the Blackwood household, small changes began to appear. Fresh flowers would appear on his breakfast tray. His books would be arranged in the order he preferred, without him having to ask. She remembered how he took his coffee, which music he enjoyed in the afternoons, which newspapers he liked to read first. One rainy morning, Alexander found her in his study, carefully repairing the antique chess set that had belonged to his grandfather. One of the knights had been broken for years and he'd never bothered to have it fixed. You play? He asked, watching her delicate fingers apply glue to the tiny piece. My father taught me. She set the knight aside to dry. He was a groundskeeper at an estate in Connecticut. He said chess taught patience and foresight, qualities essential for a good gardener and a good life. Would you play with me sometime? Her eyes met his, surprised and perhaps a little wary. If you'd like. Their first game stretched over 3 evenings, played in comfortable silence, punctuated by occasional conversation. Alexander discovered that Emma was both thoughtful and shrewd, taking her time with each move, but possessing an unexpected strategic boldness. Checkmate, she said on the third night, her voice apologetic. Alexander laughed, genuinely delighted. No one's beaten me in years. Most people let me win. I'd never insult you that way, she replied simply. Something shifted between them after that. Their conversations grew longer, deeper. Alexander found himself sharing thoughts he'd never expressed to anyone, not even to Sophia. Emma listened without judgment, offering insights that were both compassionate and clear-eyed. One afternoon he asked about her childhood. She spoke hesitantly at first, then with increasing openness about growing up in the margins of wealth, always present but never belonging. Her mother had worked as house staff for various wealthy families, including briefly for the Blackwoods when Emma was very young. I actually met you once, she admitted. I was about 7. You were a teenager. You found me reading in the library when I should have been helping my mother. Instead of reporting me, you showed me where the best books were kept. Alexander stared at her. I don't remember. Why would you? It was a small kindness to a servant's child, but I never forgot it. The revelation haunted Alexander. How many other connections and moments had he forgotten or never noticed? How many people had moved through his life, invisible to him because of the barriers of class and privilege? Meanwhile, Sophia's true nature continued to reveal itself. She called one evening, her voice tight with frustration. I can't make it this weekend. There's a charity gala in the Hamptons that I simply can't miss. The same weekend as my father's birthday celebration? You understand, don't you, darling? These connections are important for us, for our future. After he hung up, Alexander sat in silence, the weight of his deception suddenly heavy. What had begun as a test of Sophia's character had revealed far more than he'd anticipated. He found himself questioning not just his fiancée's love, but his own feelings as well. The next morning, Emma arrived to find him already awake, staring out the window at the gardens below. "You didn't sleep," she observed, placing a cup of coffee beside him. "No." He turned to look at her. "Emma, what would you do if you discovered someone wasn't who you thought they were?" She considered the question carefully. "I suppose it would depend on why they were pretending and what truth they were hiding. What if they had good intentions? Even the best intentions can cause harm when they involve deception." She met his gaze steadily. "Honesty may be difficult, but it's the foundation of anything meaningful." Her words resonated deeply. Alexander wheeled himself to the window again, watching as rain began to fall, blurring the landscape. He had stepped into this charade believing it would reveal Sophia's true character. Instead, it was revealing his own, and illuminating feelings for Emma that were becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. That evening, as Emma prepared to leave, he caught her hand impulsively. "Thank you," he said, "for everything." She looked down at their joined hands, then back at his face. Something unspoken passed between them, a current of understanding and possibility that neither was ready to acknowledge. Gently, she withdrew her hand. "Good night, Alexander," she said softly, and then she was gone, leaving him alone with thoughts that kept him awake until dawn. The autumn colors painted the Blackwood estate in brilliant hues of amber and crimson as October arrived, with crisp mornings and golden afternoons. Alexander found himself looking forward to these days with Emma, who had begun wheeling him through the gardens each afternoon, pointing out the changing foliage and the last blooms holding out against the approaching cold. "This one's called Autumn Joy," she explained, stopping his chair beside a cluster of dusty pink flowers. "It's a sedum. Most flowers fade as summer ends, but these actually deepen in color as the season progresses. They're at their most beautiful right before winter." Alexander watched her face as she spoke, noticing how her eyes brightened with enthusiasm. "Like some people," he said quietly. "Growing more beautiful with time rather than less." Their eyes met briefly before Emma looked away, a flush coloring her cheeks that matched the sedum blossoms. These moments had been occurring more frequently, charged silences, lingering glances, words that seemed to carry deeper meanings beneath their surface. One evening, as Emma read aloud from a collection of poetry he'd mentioned enjoying, Alexander found himself less focused on the words and more on the gentle cadence of her voice, the way a strand of hair had escaped her practical bun, the delicate profile of her face in the lamplight. He was startled from his reverie by the ringing of his phone, Sophia's ringtone. Emma closed the book. "I should go prepare your dinner." "No," Alexander said quickly. "Finish the poem first." The phone continued to ring as Emma hesitantly reopened the book. Only after she completed the reading did Alexander answer the call, aware that something significant had shifted in his priorities. Sophia's voice was bright and brittle on the line. "Darling, wonderful news. I've been invited to join the Whittaker family at their villa in Tuscany. It's only for 3 weeks and the connections will be invaluable." 3 weeks, Alexander repeated. "You've already been absent more than you've been present, Sophia. That's not fair. You know I'm busy with the foundation work and, honestly, Alexander, it's difficult to see you like this. Emma is there to handle the day-to-day things. You don't need me hovering." "A fiancé isn't supposed to hover. She's supposed to be a partner." A tense silence followed. "I'm trying my best," Sophia finally said, her voice tight. "For this isn't what I signed up for." The words hung in the air between them, revealing more than perhaps she intended. Alexander felt a strange sense of clarity wash over him. "No, it isn't what you signed up for. You signed up for galas and social prestige and access to the Blackwood fortune. You didn't sign up for inconvenience or sacrifice." "That's cruel and unfair," Sophia protested, but there was a hollowness to her indignation. "Go to Tuscany," Alexander said quietly. "Take as long as you need. I'll be here when you return. Or perhaps I won't. We both have decisions to make." After ending the call, Alexander sat in silence, emotions warring within him. The pretense had become almost unbearable. Not just the lie about his physical condition, but the larger deception about his feelings. He was no longer testing Sophia, He was clinging to a relationship he knew was already over, avoiding the difficult conversation that would make it official. "Is everything all right?" Emma stood in the doorway, concern evident in her expression. "No," he answered truthfully, "but I think it will be." The next morning, Alexander asked Emma to take him to his father's study. Jonathan Blackwood looked up from his desk, surprise registering on his face at the sight of his son's solemn expression. "The test is over," Alexander announced without preamble. "At least as far as Sophia is concerned. She's failed, or perhaps I have. Either way, it's time to end this charade." Jonathan studied his son carefully. "You seem certain." "I am, but there's a complication." Alexander hesitated, glancing back to ensure Emma wasn't within earshot. "I've developed feelings for someone else. Someone who has shown me what genuine care looks like, who values me for who I am rather than what I represent." Understanding dawned in Jonathan's eyes. "The caretaker." "Emma," Alexander corrected. "And yes, but she doesn't know the truth about my condition. She's been caring for me, believing I'm genuinely paralyzed." Jonathan leaned back in his chair. "So now you face a different dilemma. How to tell her you've been lying to her since the day you met." The reality of his situation hit Alexander with full force. Emma valued honesty above all else. She had made that clear. How would she react to learning that their entire relationship was built on a foundation of deception? "I need your advice, Father," Alexander admitted. "I've never felt this way about anyone before." The thought of losing her— He couldn't finish the sentence. Jonathan Blackwood's expression softened. "The truth has a way of demanding to be told, son. The longer you wait, the harder it becomes. If her feelings for you are genuine, there's a chance she'll understand. But you must be prepared for the possibility that she won't." Before Alexander could respond, there was a commotion from the front of the house. The sound of the door opening, voices raised in greeting. Sophia had returned unexpectedly, her trip to Tuscany apparently forgotten or postponed. She swept into the study moments later, elegantly dressed as always, her smile bright but her eyes wary. "Alexander, darling, I've been thinking about our conversation. You were right. I've been neglectful. That's why I've cancelled my trip." She noticed Jonathan and nodded politely. "Mr. Blackwood." "Ms. Morgan," Jonathan acknowledged, his tone neutral. "I was just leaving. My son and I have concluded our business." He gave Alexander a meaningful look before exiting, closing the door behind him. Alone with Sophia, Alexander felt a strange detachment, as if observing their interaction from a distance. She moved around the room with practiced grace, filling the silence with chatter about wedding plans suddenly back on track, specialists she'd researched, rehabilitation facilities with excellent reputations. "I realize I've been selfish," she said, perching on the arm of his wheelchair. "It was just such a shock. But I'm committed to us, to our future together, whatever that looks like." Alexander studied her beautiful face, remembering how it had once made his heart race. Now he saw only the careful calculation behind her expression, the performance of devotion that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Why the sudden change of heart?" he asked quietly. Sophia's smile faltered slightly. "I told you. I realized I was being selfish." "Did your mother have anything to do with this realization?" A flicker of something, annoyance perhaps or wariness, crossed her features. "Mother did remind me of certain practical considerations, but that's not why I'm here. I'm here because I love you." The lie hung between them, as transparent as glass. "Let's test that," Alexander suggested. "Come with me to my father's beach house for a month. Just the two of us. No galas, no social events, no distractions. Just us figuring out our new reality together." Alarm flashed in Sophia's eyes. "A month?" "Alexander, be reasonable. I have commitments, responsibilities. More important than your paralyzed fiancé?" She stood abruptly, moving away from the wheelchair. "That's not fair. I'm trying to be supportive while maintaining my own life. Is that so wrong?" "No," Alexander said softly. "What's wrong is pretending. What's wrong is lying to ourselves and each other about what we truly want." Before Sophia could respond, there was a gentle knock at the door. Emma entered, carrying a tray with Alexander's medication and a glass of water. She paused when she saw Sophia, her expression carefully neutral. "I'm sorry to interrupt. It's time for your pain management medication, Alexander." Sophia's eyes narrowed slightly at Emma's use of his first name. "I can handle that," she said, reaching for the tray. "You're dismissed for the day." Emma didn't move, her gaze fixed on Alexander, waiting for his directive rather than Sophia's. "Thank you, Emma," he said quietly. "Please leave the tray. And you're not dismissed unless you wish to be. Our schedule remains the same for today." Something unspoken passed between them. Trust, understanding, perhaps something deeper. Emma nodded and set down the tray before leaving, her back straight, her dignity intact despite Sophia's dismissive tone. The moment the door closed, Sophia rounded on him. "You let her call you Alexander, and overrule me in front of the help? What's going on here?" "She's not the help, Sophia. She's the person who has been here every day, caring for me, supporting me, seeing me as a person rather than an inconvenience or a project." "Are you implying that I don't see you as a person?" "That's absurd. I'm your fiancé." "Are you?" "Because from where I sit, quite literally, it seems like you're more interested in being a Blackwood than being my wife." Sophia's face flushed with anger. "That's unfair and you know it. I've stood by you through this whole ordeal. Have you? Because I count the days you've been here on one hand, while Emma has been present every single day without complaint, without expectation." "Emma?" Sophia's voice turned cold. "So that's what this is about. You've developed feelings for your nurse. How tragically predictable." Alexander felt a calm certainty settle over him. "This isn't about Emma, it's about us. About who we really are and what we truly want. I think deep down you know as well as I do that we want different things." Sophia stared at him for a long moment, calculation visible behind her eyes. Then suddenly her expression crumpled, tears filling her eyes. "Please don't do this. I know I've made mistakes, but I love you." "I do." For a moment Alexander wavered, but then he remembered the quiet strength in Emma's eyes, the genuine care in her actions, the way she had shown him what love actually looked like, not in grand declarations, but in daily choices to be present, to be kind, to be real. "I think you should go," he said gently. "Take some time to consider what you truly want. Not what your mother wants, not what society expects, but what you want. Because I've realized what I want, and I don't think it's what we have." The confrontation with Sophia left Alexander emotionally drained, but strangely liberated. For days afterward, he wrestled with how to reveal the truth to Emma. Every scenario he imagined ended with her walking away, disgusted by his deception. Yet the burden of the lie grew heavier each day as his feelings for her deepened. Emma noticed the change in him, the distraction, the troubled silences, but respected his privacy enough not to pry. Instead, she brought small comforts, his favorite books, freshly brewed coffee in the mornings, wildflowers from the edge of the estate arranged simply in a mason jar. One evening, as they sat in the garden watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of lavender and gold, Alexander made his decision. He could no longer continue the charade regardless of the consequences. "Emma," he began, his heart pounding so loudly he was certain she could hear it. "There's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you long ago." She turned to him, her face open and attentive. That trusting expression nearly broke his resolve, but he forced himself to continue. "I haven't been honest with you. About my condition." He took a deep breath. "I'm not actually paralyzed." Emma's expression didn't change at first, as if she hadn't quite processed his words. Then confusion clouded her features. "I don't understand. The accident was staged. The paralysis is a pretense." The words tumbled out now, unstoppable. "My father suggested it as a test for Sophia, to see if she truly loved me, or just the Blackwood name and fortune. I agreed to it, though I'm ashamed of that now." Emma stood abruptly, taking several steps away from him. Her back was turned, and Alexander couldn't see her expression, but the rigid line of her shoulders spoke volumes. "All this time," she said, her voice barely audible, "you've been lying. Watching me care for you, worry about you, when you could have stood up at any moment." Yes, he didn't try to justify it or minimize it. It was wrong. Inexcusably wrong. She whirled to face him, and the hurt in her eyes was worse than any anger could have been. "Was anything real, or was I just part of the performance? A convenient prop in your test of Sophia's character?" "No." Alexander pushed himself out of the wheelchair, standing for the first time in Emma's presence. She took a step back, her eyes widening. You were never part of the plan. You were the unexpected variable, the person who showed me what genuine care actually looks like, what love should be. Emma flinched at the word love, tears filling her eyes. How can you talk about genuine anything when this entire situation has been a lie? Not everything was a lie, Alexander said desperately. Not the conversations we shared, not the connection between us. Not my feelings for you. Your feelings? Emma's laugh was bitter. You don't even know me, Alexander. You know the caretaker who bathed you and dressed you and read to you. You don't know Emma Wilson. That's not true. I know you love poetry but prefer novels. I know you take your tea with honey, never sugar. I know you're kind without being condescending, strong without being hard. I know your favorite color is blue, not bright blue, but the soft blue of early morning. I know when you concentrate, you bite your lower lip. I know you're the most authentic person I've ever met. Emma shook her head, tears streaming down her face now. Stop, please. I fell in love with you, Emma, not because you cared for me when you thought I was injured, but because of who you are. Your integrity, your intelligence, your quiet strength. The way you see beauty in simple things. The way you treated me like a person, not a bank account. I can't do this, Emma whispered. She backed away, then turned and fled toward the house. Alexander watched her go, devastation washing over him. He had expected anger, even contempt, but the profound hurt in her eyes was so much worse. He had wounded her deeply, and he had no right to expect forgiveness. That night he didn't sleep. At dawn he walked to the staff quarters, hoping to catch Emma before she left. But Mrs. Reynolds, the housekeeper, informed him that Emma had packed her things and departed shortly after their conversation in the garden. She left this for you, Mrs. Reynolds said, handing him an envelope. Inside was a simple note. I need time. Please don't contact me. Emma. The next weeks passed in a grey haze for Alexander. He officially ended his engagement to Sophia, who reacted with a calculated mixture of tears and dignified acceptance once she realized the decision was final. The gossip columns speculated wildly about the broken engagement, but Alexander paid little attention to the rumors swirling through New York society. He threw himself into work at the Blackwood Foundation, focusing on initiatives supporting education and healthcare for underserved communities. The work was meaningful, but couldn't fill the void Emma had left. He respected her request for space, though every day he fought the urge to seek her out. You did the right thing by telling her the truth, his father said one evening, finding Alexander staring out the window of his study. Even if it didn't bring the outcome you hoped for. I know, Alexander replied, but knowing it was right doesn't make it hurt any less. 3 months after Emma's departure, Alexander received an invitation to speak at a literacy program graduation ceremony at a community center in Brooklyn. He almost declined, buried in foundation work, until he noticed the center's name, the same one where Emma had mentioned volunteering. His heart raced as he entered the modest building on the evening of the ceremony. The room was filled with adults of all ages, many accompanied by proud family members. Alexander scanned the crowd, trying not to appear obvious in his search, but there was no sign of Emma. Disappointment settled heavily in his chest as he delivered his speech, congratulating the graduates on their accomplishment and announcing a Blackwood Foundation grant to expand the program. As the crowd applauded, he caught a glimpse of chestnut hair at the back of the room. Emma stood near the exit, partially hidden behind a column. Their eyes met across the distance, and for a moment, everything and everyone else seemed to fade away. She didn't smile, but she didn't leave either, which Alexander took as a hopeful sign. After the ceremony, he found her in the small courtyard behind the building, sitting on a bench beneath the glow of string lights. I wasn't sure you'd still be volunteering here, he said, stopping a respectful distance away. I almost quit, she admitted. But these people need the help, and it wasn't fair to punish them for my personal issues. That sounds like you, Alexander said softly. Always thinking of others first. Emma looked at him directly for the first time. You look well. I'm not really. I miss you, Emma, every day. She sighed, a small, tired sound. Alexander, please just hear me out. Then if you want me to leave you alone forever, I will. When she didn't object, he continued. What I did was inexcusable. The deception, the lie, all of it. I won't try to justify it. But I want you to know that meeting you changed me fundamentally. You showed me what it means to see people, really see them regardless of their status or wealth. You taught me about dignity and integrity through your actions, not just words. Emma's expression remained guarded. I believe you're sincere. But that doesn't change what happened. No, it doesn't. I can't undo the past. But I can promise you honesty for the future. Complete, unflinching honesty in all things. I can promise to be the man you believed I was, the man you helped me become. She was quiet for a long moment. When I left, I was so angry and hurt. I felt used, manipulated. I questioned everything we'd shared. She looked down at her hands. But as time passed, I found myself remembering moments that couldn't have been feigned. Conversations at 3 in the morning about books and ideas. The way you listened when I spoke about my childhood. How you never made me feel less than despite our different backgrounds. Hope flickered in Alexander's chest. Those moments were real. All of them. I know that now, Emma admitted. Which is why I came tonight. I knew you'd be speaking. She met his gaze steadily. I'm not saying I'm ready to forgive everything, but I think I'm ready to talk. That's all I ask for, Alexander said, relief washing over him. A chance to talk. To start again with complete honesty between us. Emma nodded, a small smile finally softening her features. I'd like that. They began slowly, meeting for coffee once a week, then twice. Alexander showed Emma the real man behind the deception, his work with the foundation, his dreams for the future, his flaws and strengths alike. Emma, in turn, shared more of herself, her aspirations to finish her degree in literature, her complicated relationship with her mother, her love of teaching. 6 months after their reunion at the community center, Alexander took Emma to the garden where he had first confessed the truth. Spring had transformed the landscape, new growth pushing through the soil, buds unfurling on branches that had seemed dead during winter. I wanted to bring you here because this place represents both an ending and a beginning for us, he said, taking her hand. It's where I lost you, but also where I first told you the complete truth. Emma's fingers tightened around his. It's beautiful in the spring. It is, but not as beautiful as you. Alexander drew a deep breath. Emma, these past months have been the most honest, most meaningful of my life. I love you, not as the woman who cared for me when I pretended to be injured, but as the woman who taught me what integrity looks like, what love should be. He knelt before her, drawing a small box from his pocket. I'm asking for your hand exactly as I am, just a man who loves you, who wants to build a life with you based on truth and mutual respect. Will you marry me? Emma looked down at him, tears glistening in her eyes. Yes, she whispered. Yes. Their wedding was held on the Blackwood estate, but it bore little resemblance to the lavish affair once planned with Sophia. Instead, it was intimate and meaningful, decorated with wildflowers from the estate grounds, attended by people they truly cared about, rather than social connections. Jonathan Blackwood watched with quiet satisfaction as his son and new daughter-in-law shared their first dance. You know, he said to Dr. Wells, who stood beside him, my test revealed far more than I anticipated. It showed not just Sophia's true character, but Alexander's as well. And it brought him to Emma. Sometimes, Dr. Wells replied, the most valuable lessons come from our mistakes. Across the room, Sophia Morgan, now engaged to a European count, watched the couple with a complex expression. Perhaps there was regret there, or perhaps just recognition of a path not taken. Alexander and Emma moved to a brownstone in Brooklyn after their honeymoon, close to the community center, where they both now volunteered. The Blackwood wealth remained a part of their lives, funding educational initiatives, supporting literacy programs, creating opportunities for others, but it no longer defined Alexander's identity or purpose. 1 year after their wedding, as they sat in their small garden behind the brownstone, Emma placed Alexander's hand on her stomach. We're going to have a baby, she said, her eyes shining. Alexander pulled her into his arms, overwhelmed with joy. Thank you, he whispered against her hair. For what? She asked, leaning back to look at him. For giving me a second chance. For teaching me what matters. For loving me enough to forgive me. Emma smiled, touching his face gently. Love isn't about perfection, Alexander. It's about seeing someone completely, flaws and all, and choosing them anyway. You taught me that too. As the sun set over Brooklyn, Casting golden light across their small piece of the world, Alexander Blackwood held his wife close, grateful for the deception that had ultimately led him to truth, and for the woman who had shown him what love really meant, not in grand gestures or social status, but in daily choices. To be present, to be honest, to be real. In the distance, the community center where they had reconnected stood as a testament to new beginnings, to stories rewritten, to the quiet power of second chances and honest hearts finding their way to one another against all odds. Dear listeners, we hope you've been touched by Alexander and Emma's journey of deception, forgiveness, and authentic love. Their story reminds us that true connection isn't about perfection, but about seeing someone completely and choosing them anyway. If this story moved you, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel and leave a like on this video. Your support helps us continue sharing these emotional journeys that reflect the complexity and beauty of human relationships. For more stories that explore the heart's capacity for forgiveness and growth, check out our special playlist by clicking the link to the left. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever experienced a relationship that taught you what love truly means? Until our next story, remember that sometimes the most beautiful beginnings come after what seems like an ending.